You're listening to the Arts Report on YouTube. Shane Koyczan, if you don't know, was the first Canadian to win the individual championship title at the U.S. National Poetry Slam and was featured in the 2010 Winter Olympic opening ceremonies. Now he's bringing a multimedia spoken word show called When I Was a Kid to the Cultch. So naturally, I wanted to ask him what his childhood was like. The short answer being, not so great. We talked about his being bullied and his dream of being a pro wrestler, and we also talked about his recent political activism, namely his opposition to the casino at BC Place. But first, here he is talking about what it is about childhood that is so valuable.
Well, I guess to me it's sort of that age of wonder and curiosity, and I think along the way we tend to lose that, or we let that go, and that kind of starts with our parents telling us it's time to put childish things away, and we start throwing away these aspects of our life that I think are pretty crucial. And I don't think we mean to do it on purpose. I think it becomes accidental. We become so engrossed in the idea of we're becoming adults, and that's very exciting at the time. But we tend to throw out the baby with the bathwater in that sort of instance. So I think, the show for me is really looking back. And, I had a hard childhood, growing up, bullied a lot. And for a long time, I didn't like to think of my childhood at all because I thought, I never really had one or I was robbed of one. But looking back on it now, I see that, there were these moments of just sheer joy and, where you really sort of embrace that aspect of your life where it's I did have a childhood. I wasn't cheated. There were moments of, happiness. There were, as dark as things got, there were those moments of, I guess the ice cream moments, that's what I call them.
What would be the other moments?
The other moments were the, mud puddles, or I got a hole in my boot and now have a soaker, sort of moments.
Right. Well, it's interesting you say that you didn't have a good childhood, because I kind of assumed you did. I mean, if you're writing a whole show about the sort of merits of childhood, I just sort of assumed that, you must have had a good one, but that's not the case.
Well, no, that's the thing, though. It's it's the contrast. For me, the show is more about, as hard as it was, I really want to look back on some of the more joyous aspects of my childhood and, sort of offset, some of the darker moments. So, there's going to be a lot of, there's going to be a lot of light to this show, but there'll also be, a good balance of dark as well. We have to set up the backdrop and show you, okay, this is why this is so bright to me, or this is why this moment stands out. And it's because it was set against the backdrop of this other horrible experience, So.
Yeah, and it gives it context. And I guess in some ways that could be as inspiring to a person's life as the happy moments, right? It's not only the sugary ice cream things that you look back on, but it's the negative stuff, I guess, could inspire you to do what you do now as well, right?
Absolutely. I think the most inspiring thing about it is how we as people, no matter what your past is, you learn to shine in these dark places, in these extremely dark places. You learn to, you find some way to survive, some way to navigate your way through all of this stuff. And to me, it's that felt for a long time. It's I had to grow up real fast, so I didn't really have a chance to have a childhood, which is not the case at all, looking back on it now. Because I had a lot of fun, too, as much as, my days were spent running away from bullies, I also had some fun. So.
Right. Now, speaking of childhood and growing up, you're a poet now, an Olympian poet, if I may say. And so I wonder, where did that love of words come from, and what point in your life did you discover that?
It's definitely been more of a journey. I always liked words as a kid. I enjoyed reading, and I wrote in a journal when I was a kid, and that's kind of how the show came about. Was my grandmother finding all these journals that I wrote when I was a kid. She came downstairs and she was like, "Well, here's all your diaries." And I was like, "I don't write in diaries. I'm a journal man." But going through and seeing a lot of that sort of, seeing a lot of my past, and God, a lot of it was so horrible. It was so bad. You look at it and you're like, oh God, did I really write that down? Good grief. So in that way, I've always had a love with words, but I never really considered that as a career path. When I was a kid, I wanted to be, first I wanted to be a marine biologist. And then I wanted to be, a politician. And then, I settled on I want to be a wrestler. and which just seems like the craziest path to me. But it's like you get to certain, points in your life, and I guess, at around, that really influential age of, I'd say around 12 or 13 is when you really start to I have a dream or something. Was like big fan of Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and I was like, I'm going to be a wrestler, and I had my whole gimmick of my name was going to be the Garbage Man, and my saying was going to be I'm taking out the trash. My finishing move was the Trash Compactor.
Wow, you had it all thought out.
Oh yeah, I was like gung ho about this thing, and then this guy Duke the Dumpster Drosy shows up on the scene and steals my motto and then my finishing move, and I was like, what's the point? What do I do? Where do we go now that our manhood has been stolen? I guess we turn to poetry.
a natural progression.
Absolutely, yeah.
And now, so you mentioned that you wanted to be a politician at some point, and you still have your political side to you. Most recently, you were at an anti-casino rally at City Hall, and so I just wanted to kind of quickly get your perspective on that. As far as I know, it's still sort of on the table, or it's still being finalized, this decision. So I wanted to ask you, what is your gripe with this casino? What is your main complaint?
I just don't think that that's the way any city should be heading in terms of how do we offset spending for all these sort of things that we need. I live in Penticton. We have a casino here, and we live in a community that is currently dying. So I don't think it's going to save Vancouver. And the thing about putting a casino in the heart of the city, that then becomes the heart of the city. And do you really want this sort of I don't want to. Well, I guess cancerous may be the best way to put it. The sort of center of Vancouver, where it's it's proven. Casinos, gambling leads to a higher crime rate. It leads to gambling addiction. There's so many negatives, and there are not enough positives. And even the positives that they say will gain from it, these are promises that haven't been kept for I can't remember any promises being kept. So, in terms of
what kinds of benefits? I guess the financial ones.
Yeah, the financials for the cities or the charities that need them. And you look at Vancouver, or BC persons living with AIDS. They were the first ones to speak out against the casino, and then they got slammed by losing a huge chunk of their grant from the Gaming Commission. It's like, well, if you really want to play these bullying sort of political games, then I think that's a pretty clear sign that it's like we're being bullied. I think that's the main thing. And growing up, I have a problem with that. It's happened to me often enough. I don't think it should happen to an entire city.
Wow. Well said. Well, that's all we have time for. Is there anything else you'd want to add about anything?
Let May speak at the debates.
Aha.
Good God.
Yeah, we have an election coming up, and Elizabeth May is not being allowed to participate, even though they let her participate the last time around.
I know, it makes absolutely no sense, and, it really just shows that, maybe they're scared that the Green Party is gaining power right now, or that people are starting to listen to them, and maybe people are looking for, a viable option in terms of, how Canada should be led or where Canada should be going. And I think it's such a shame that they're not at least willing. I think it just puts democracy on, behind closed doors now. It's like, if you're not going to let everybody who deserves to speak have a chance to speak, then, I think that speaks volumes in terms of where we're heading. And I just think it's a complete shame. And the wrong direction. So I'm guessing you're not voting Conservative this time around. Oh, absolutely not. No, they should be ashamed of themselves. They should be ashamed. Yeah. I just can't believe it. Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks so much for that. I appreciate actually you threw that in because it's certainly timely, and I think there is an online petition that people can find to support Elizabeth May being allowed in the debates. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, and I appreciate your time. Oh, cheers. Thank you so much for having me, man. Don't miss the Arts Report on CiTR Radio in Vancouver, 101.9 FM. That's Wednesdays at 5 p.m. We're also streaming online at CiTR.ca every Wednesday at 5. And don't miss our podcast, which you can find, at CiTR.ca.